Sometimes a violent environment can lead to a violent way of life. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. Join me on my morning hike this morning, and I was thinking about something, which I've seen over the span of my career, is that if you live in a violent community, sometimes that normalizes violence as a way of life, and it actually becomes part of the culture. So two white researchers, Wolfgang and Farracuti, back in the 70s, went to the hoods of Philly, of course, where a lot of black people lived, and basically conducted research, which was, I guess it was, not necessarily thrown out, but it was highly criticized because, one, you went to a black community, white guys are going to a black community, and you're stereotyping and you have bias and all of these other kind of things that are included in your research. But essentially they went to these hoods and they said, the people that live there have normalized violence as a way of life, like drugs, theft, robbery, and things like that, abuse, not calling the police when crimes are being committed. They're basically saying that, hey, these people think that violence is normal in certain areas. And while I agree with some aspects of the research, I also agree with some of the criticism about the research as well. But all that to say is that research is applicable to certain aspects of violent environments. And I work with a lot of abuse victims as well as abusers. I'll give you an example. Like, I lived in Chicago years ago, and it's normal. It's normal, or I would say it happened to me. I wouldn't say it's normal. I would say it happened to me a number of times where men would just drive their car up beside me and say, get in, or, would just grab you out of nowhere. And I know that this is something that also happens in New York and other urban cities as well. I mean, even in fact, last time I went to Chicago was a couple of years ago, and I was doing like a photo shoot in Chicago, and a man just grabbed me in the middle of the photo shoot, just out of nowhere. And I was in a public area, and he wouldn't let go unless the photographer took a picture, and blah blah blah. Another, if you've ever caught the BART in Oakland, right, especially in Fruitvale Station. You walk down, if you have to park on International Boulevard, if you walk down International Boulevard, cars are honking at you. Me specifically, as a black woman walking down International Boulevard, and they're doing that because they're soliciting for prostitution. And if you know anything about Oakland or International Boulevard, and I don't know if this is still true, but Oakland was the number 1 place for a long time in the U.S. where women and girls were trafficked, and so that's a highly trafficked area all down International Boulevard. And so when other aspects of that theory is like, if you intergenerationally, right, if you grew up seeing violence in the home, your parents had DV, your grandparents had DV, brothers and sisters had domestic violence. It becomes normalized to a certain degree, and we condition that. We condition ourselves to normalize that and accept that is, this is just how things were. This is what it was. I'm not, we've been taught to not tell anybody about it, to not talk about it. But also we've been oppressed to stay in this type of environment. And so seeing that, people do violent things to us, hearing people say violent or misogynistic things about women, or racially biased things, those things to a certain degree, unfortunately, become normalized, whether we realize it or not, because that's just what we what we're exposed to. And there's so many reasons why we can't get out of it if we're oppressed, if we are hunted, if we're fearful of our oppressor. Just so many things, and so many reasons why.